There's not a whole lot going on here in this picture of a jar of peach syrup that was actually supposed to be peach jam that my friend made, but then she forgot to add the pectin at the right time, and it ended up being peach syrup. But even though there's not a whole lot happening in this photo, that's kind of the point, and it's more of a proof of concept that you don't need fancy equipment, lighting, or even in this case a fancy subject to take a good picture. This jar of peach syrup was on a table. I actually had it on my office desk, and that's it. There's nothing special about that. What was special, though, that kind of made this photo possible was the lighting, the angle of the lighting, and the time of day. So those three things came together to make this photo here. I took this on a morning at about 8 o'clock after I got to work. I had my camera with me, and I saw this jar of peach syrup, and I thought, hey, that might make a cool photo. The early morning light made for these nice long shadows that you can see behind it. The orange translucent syrup I thought was kind of interesting. And the canning jar itself just had this sort of old school cool to it. Like, you don't see a whole ton of canning jars around anymore. So I thought it might work out for a cool little photo experiment. I tried shooting it with the sun behind it because the jelly or the syrup is sort of translucent, and I thought it might make for this cool like glowing effect. Didn't really work. It was so backlit because of the sun. So I tried it this way instead, which I think is actually a lot better. And the key issue at hand here, and maybe this photo is a good illustration of this concept, is called composition, which I talk about sometimes. In other words, it's a jar. It's something really simple. But how can you make it interesting by paying attention to the overall composition of the shot? Where are you going to place your subject in relation to the background? And what else is there besides just, in this case, a jar of peach syrup to make the photo interesting? And what can you do to compose the shot, to frame everything inside the shot to make it interesting? For that to happen here, I put the jar on the left-hand side of the picture, and I focused on the dimples on the top lid, which I thought were kind of cool. And it again added to this like old school coolness factor. It was like this dimpled jar lid. And I also, as I did this, I tried to pay attention to the shadows. So I had this long shadow going behind the jar, which is actually measured in inches. It's like the shadow's longer than the jar, so that was neat. And then also the shadows of the crossbars and the panes of glass in the window. That the window is just to the left of this picture, and you can see these window shadows. And the shadow on the top right and the bottom right, they create like this natural vignette for the image where they almost cut off those corners of the picture and make you focus on the jar itself. And so all these elements came together to make what I think is kind of a cool picture. I don't think, I could go back and check, but I don't think I cropped this at all. Everything you see here is in camera in terms of the cropping. And I wanted your eyes to be drawn to the jar and then drawn away down and start looking at the other shadows and the other elements of this picture. There are a little bit more about this picture. I shot this at f2.8 because I thought f1.8 was maybe a little too shallow, and I did shoot a couple at f1.8, and yeah, it was too shallow depth of field. ISO 100 because it was so bright and early in the morning, 1/1600th of a shutter, so super fast shutter. And I really paid attention to the angle that I was shooting, all the compositional elements, and you know what? I like the results. I think this is kind of cool. So my challenge to you then, and I really mean it as a challenge this time, not like a lesson, but a challenge, is take something simple, like a jar of jelly, and turn it into a cool photograph. If you're listening to this, take a photo and post it in the comments on the blog, and let me see what you come up with for something simple, like an everyday object that you have framed and composed in a new and interesting way to make a cool photo.